Okay, here we go. Right, brilliant. So, welcome everyone. This is our next episode of the Fork in the Road podcast, and I'm really delighted to welcome Johnathan Cranford, who's a level 2 CrossFit trainer and a former USA boxing coach. Amazing. And he's written a book called Sugar Demons, which is in the resource chapter of the Fork in the Road book. It's a lovely practical book, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. And in it, he dives into his own story of the ups and downs of the struggle with sugar, like many of us have had. So welcome, Jonathan. I'm so pleased. We've not actually connected up to now, have we? So it's lovely to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's really great to connect with you. I know we've been following and circling around each other on Twitter for quite a while, and we have a lot of mutual friends in common. And I'm a big fan of yours and your husband. It's lovely to be a part of this community, which I didn't even really become a part of until after I wrote the book, because I didn't realize how big this community was of food addiction, sugar addiction. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Oh
And
wow, yeah, that's really interesting. So you wrote the book and you weren't aware of the sort of wider. I suppose I wasn't a few years ago actually. It's only recently that I've realised how many people are interested and working in this space and trying to help people. Do you think it's really snowballing? I get the impression that it is.
I hope so. I really do. Yeah, I mean, I knew who Robert Lustig was, mostly because I was into the paleo diet stuff before, and he's big. He has some crossover in that community and some of the videos that I was watching at the time, YouTube videos and podcasts. And he's so he was famous. He's probably the most famous out of all of us in this space.
Yeah.
Uh, and a terrific writer on top of being a doctor. Amazing. But that was the only guy that I really was aware of at the time. And I didn't even know that, now that I know like David Afram Wolf and Molly Payne Shub and, Benton Johnson, all of those guys, I didn't even know that there were these groups that they had where you could go and talk and to other food addicts and have like a group therapy session. I wish I'd known about that. I just sort of, kind of had to figure it out on my own because I wasn't really looking either. To
Yeah.
be honest. So I probably should have done that, but I'd already started, figuring things out on my own, and that's when I started writing the book.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? People like David, we're sure to have David on at some point, and the way he does, people are doing free groups now for people, and then of course Clubhouse. We've crossed paths on this new social media platform, which I'm quite liking actually for this community. I think it's a great way of connecting with our people, and just making a space for a conversation.
Yeah, it's really cool. I've been on there. I think I've only been on twice now. So I'm still figuring out how to use the app, but I really think it's great. I've listened in on quite a few conversations, and it's pretty inspiring already.
Yeah, definitely. So a question I always like to ask, of course, because of this idea of the fork in the road, um, is for you, was there a specific kind of moment in your life, a sort of realization where you thought, right, I need to take a different path? Was there a time when that phrase, the sort of fork in the road, um, you're looking back, you would have used that phrase?
Yeah, there was that. I call it my aha moment, if that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you that story. I've told it a couple of times on some other podcasts. So I want to give you something new that I haven't talked about on anywhere else before.
Okay.
Before I go into that story, so I'm going to go back just a few years to a memory I have of a night out with my wife. And this is, I guess, it was one of those. There was an aha moment there. It wasn't the fork in the road moment, but it was a little bit of a recognition. And so I was out at dinner with my wife and some other people from our school district. We're both teachers and in the
Mhm.
same district, and we were out with some other folks from there. And we were all having a terrible dinner. We were all eating terrible. Well, we weren't. The food was fine. The food was delicious, but we were, eating at like a Southern cooking, Texas Southern cooking kind of place. And so we weren't eating clean at all. And but we were having a good time. This is long, long, long before I decided to face my sugar demons or even knew what it was.
Mm.
And there was a woman there who was a coworker, not at the same school as us, but in our same district, so a coworker nonetheless. And she did something that clicked in my head. Something clicked when I watched her do this. At the end of the meal, we all ordered dessert, and she ordered a dessert to eat at the table, and then she ordered a second dessert to go.
Mm.
She said, well, I'm just going to eat this other dessert tomorrow because I really like this dessert. But something in my mind knew. I was like, no, you're going to eat that dessert when you get home because that's what I would do. And I had this
Yeah.
sense of this connection and knowing, not in a good way, but just knowing like, that term namaste, where, it means, like the divinity in me
Yeah.
recognizes the divinity in you. This was the exact opposite. This was the evil in me recognizes the evil
Oh,
in you. And
absolutely. Yeah. I get that
I
a lot. I get that a lot now when I look around people. Yeah.
exactly. But at the same time, it was easy, I guess, to take that and recognize it and go, oh, I have some of those tendencies, but I'm not her. I'm not as bad as her. So I could dismiss it, and instantly. And she was a little bit overweight, so it was easy to kind of judge her in that way, even though I'm the exact same as her. But I was thinking to myself, well, I have some tendencies, but I would never order two desserts, in public like that, and just and pretend like I was going to go eat the second one, the next day or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was kind of judgmental in that moment, but it was also that I was recognizing that this woman has a problem most likely, and it's the same problem that I have, but I wasn't ready to admit that it was my problem. I actually used her problem to dismiss my own by saying like, oh, well, I'm not that bad, so I must be fine. Those other people are bad like that.
There's people worse than me kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. You're not an alcoholic until you've reached that, rock bottom moment, right? Until you're passed out behind a dumpster somewhere. And that's, it takes a lot of people to get to that point before they want to recognize that, where they are.
Yeah.
And I guess you could say my fork in the road moment was similar, right? And, obviously it's not alcohol, but I had a moment where my aha moment was I was in my kitchen and I was staring into my kitchen trash can. And the reason I was staring into my kitchen trash can was because I had two desserts I was trying to hide after I'd eaten them both. I'd bought 2 pints of ice cream,
Yeah.
and I'd probably decided in the store that I was going to eat one when I got home and then one later. And of course, I ate them both right away. And then I was hiding them in the trash. And I was looking in the trash can to find trash to like cover it up, to put them towards the bottom so I could cover the 2 pints, so that if anybody came by and threw something in the trash can, they wouldn't see 2 empty pints of ice cream and know exactly who did it. Because there's only 3 people in my household: it's
Yeah.
myself, my wife, and they're gonna know. And
Yeah.
what's funny about that, and you have to understand, is that I was already, I was never overweight really. Not, I've yo-yoed with my weight a little bit, but nothing that anyone would notice other than me. Maybe the people closest to me. Nothing. I never suffered the side effect of obesity. My metabolism's always been pretty resilient, so I've been very fortunate in that, and I recognize that, I understand that it's not just because I was fortunate enough to have that metabolism, it's not okay for me to judge other people, because they don't. It doesn't make me any better. I just, I didn't wear my addiction like other people do, and I'm fortunate in that. That's all it is. It's just luck. So I never had that. My wife and daughter, who I was hiding the evidence of my binge from, they didn't think I had an issue because I don't look like somebody who's addicted. I'm a CrossFit
You're so fit. Yeah. Yeah.
coach. I'm healthy. I work out. I'm right. I'm coaching. I'm teaching the nutrition classes at our gym. Doing that multiple times a year. And I'm eating, mostly paleo, real food type diet all the time, other than these binges that I would have, because I would just binge. I would white knuckle and then I would binge, and then I would, sometimes I would binge too much, and because sometimes I'd be okay. They'd see me binge on ice cream once in a while, and they'd be okay with it. But if I was doing it a lot, then I would start to get embarrassed. And so I'm staring into my kitchen trash can, looking at this and going, my wife and daughter don't care, but I care. They would just look at it and laugh and then not think anything's wrong. Really, it wouldn't set anything off in their minds. But with me, I realized that I was ashamed of what I was doing, and I knew that what I was doing was wrong and that it was a problem. And it finally clicked in that moment that was an issue, that I don't have control over this.
Yeah.
And covering up your trash with other trash, covering up the evidence of your binge with other trash, is you trying to hide your shame. And there's something wrong with that. That's not normal.
Yeah.
And so that was my moment that I woke up, but nobody was ever going to come and tell me that I maybe have a problem, because they just couldn't see it. Nobody would be able to see that.
Yeah.
So I had to just kind of wake up to it on my own.
Yeah. And so if that was like you say, that was your kind of aha moment, or maybe the moment when you thought, oh God, it's a bit of a problem here. And if let's say 10 out of 10 was your ultimate food sobriety, like what it would really look like to you to be, to have that complete sort of food freedom place, or that place free of cravings and obsession with food, where would you say you're up to now? Do you feel you've kind of gone all the way, or do you feel there's kind of more work to do, or if you get the question, if that was the start of the journey, do you have a sense of there's further to go, or are you kind of content with where you are now?
Yeah, I think I recognize. Are you starting the grin method? Is that the book?
A
I
little.
love it. I love it. I'm going to steal it and try to use it with the folks that I work with.
Yeah, please do.
I'm not certified or an LPC or anything like that, so I don't charge money. I just try to help people that are in need. But yeah, I love it. Yes, I am very comfortable with where I'm at right now. I don't really deal with cravings hardly at all anymore. I'm kind of past that phase. It depends on what I'm doing. My training sometimes requires a higher amount of carbohydrates. And if I do that incorrectly, then I can get a sense that maybe I'm playing with fire. And
Right.
so that's always right there. And I think I struggled with it for so long that I just respect it so much now.
Yeah.
I have to give it all the respect that, that you do any type of, alcohol or drug addiction. I give it that same amount.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just I'm in a place where I have that food freedom now. I was terrified of it for a very long time. Once I got to where I felt like I was clean and
Mm.
in control, then I went a whole year basically without eating, anything that was even, any kind of grain, pasta, anything like that. It was just no desserts,
Yeah.
full year, and that was like, I felt like after 1 year that I'd done pretty good, but I was still afraid to, to let anything in. Now I'm not as afraid. I just have rules around it. So it's not that I can never, have, a little bite of something here or there with my significant other, or try something. I'm not at that point anymore. But I am always very respectful of it, to where like I'm not going to do something that I know gives me cravings the next day.
Yeah.
And if I do have cravings the next day, then I have to button it up. But also, we have to keep in mind that my disease progression wasn't as far as some other people's might be.
Correct. Yeah.
So, I was yo-yoing, and a lot of it was just me being ignorant of why I wasn't in control of my diet, the way that most of my clients are ignorant that they weren't in control of their diets. Like we would do a Whole30. Are you familiar with the Whole30?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I've done one or two.
Right. How many people have done, multiple Whole30s? And, it's
Mm.
like, why is it so hard? Well, why is it so hard? So I'd have, folks at the gym that would do a Whole30 and then they would just binge right after, or they just couldn't wait till the day where they could have a glass of wine, or,
Yeah.
whatever it was. And it's like, okay, that's not recovery. That's just white knuckling it for 30 days.
Yeah.
I think the Whole30 is a fantastic tool, and we still use it in the gym sometimes. But you've got to understand that Whole30 is really great for getting you to the promised land where the cravings die down quite a bit.
Mm.
But it's not going to get you to where you need to be. Like I think Sharissa Kennedy or Molly, one of them always says, abstinence is not the same thing as recovery. And that's true. You have to figure out a way to where you can live in this world, in this food environment comfortably. And that's I feel like I'm there now, but I always have respect for it, because I had relapsed so many times before I really got control. And so now I'm just very cognizant of what the foods are doing to me, and how much I can have of what. And for the most part, I abstain. But if I do have a little something here or there, it's very, very seldom, and it's always very controlled. And I have some pretty crazy rules about it.
Yeah. Well, everyone finds their own unique kind of package, don't they, of what they need to do to stay on that path, really. Um, so I mean, I guess a lot of how you did it, how you got to where you are now, which is this kind of comfortable place, is in the book Sugar Demons, I guess. Is that right? So how you did it, you sort of then turn that into the what you share in the book and some of the techniques?
Right. I was inspired by Jane McDonegal, who wrote a book called Super Better. And it's just kind of like a gamification
Mm,
of your life. It's really cool, but she had these, these little games you could play with yourself. I use them with my students now. You can use it for basically anything, any goal you're trying to achieve or anything you're trying to get through, whether it's big or small, you can gamify it. And so it started there, and that book kind of gave me hope. And then I just sort of created my own version of that around the sugar addiction stuff. But one thing that I discovered along the way, and I think this is the most powerful thing, is that, and I don't see a lot of people talking about it, but I think it's really, really powerful that you can track your cravings. They are not as random as you think they are.
yeah.
Like they are fairly predictable actually in most people, because it's always related to something. For me it's stress or boredom, and stress being the bigger of the two. Um, so for myself, I knew that I was always getting cravings right after work, after a stressful work day. At the time I was working a job at a therapeutic campus where I worked exclusively with emotionally disturbed kids. So that was it's a pretty tough job, because
Yeah.
sometimes you're getting punched, kicked, spit on, you're getting called names, and that's an everyday normal thing there. And I'd come home sometimes after like a really heavy day, and I would instantly be craving something. I needed to put something in my mouth immediately, and and then I would get it again after dinner. Those were my two times where it was always very, very, very predictable
Mm,
during the school week, during the work week. So, and it was, that's just the evening is just stressing about the next day. What am I going to do tomorrow? What's it going to be like? Do I need to, what do I need to do before I go into work? So there was, those are pretty predictable. And then boredom, it visits a lot more often on the weekends. So once I started tracking and figuring out, and just, oh, I messed up here, and I would relapse, but I would try to learn something every single time.
yeah.
I'd start kind of making notes in my head or on paper or whatever I needed to do. And I started learning, okay, there's a pattern to this. And that just sort of happened serendipitously. I didn't plan that. I just sort of just figured it out
Yeah.
over time. I was like, okay, so this is traceable. And you can trace your patterns back to what your triggers are very easily. And then once I did that, I was like, okay, well, now we can gamify it, because now I know when those cravings are going to hit. So now I'm going to have like a before, a during, and an after craving plan.
Yeah.
And so once you know when the enemy is going to come and attack you, you can set up a plan around that. So I can prepare for it 30 minutes to an hour beforehand. Then we talk about in the book activating power-ups or something to give you some sort of efficacy. And then I have a plan during, which is, of course, obviously you need to have meal prep. You need to have something ready to go that is your food. You can't be, you can't just be, a slave to your food environment. And then, after the craving, you need to be doing something, taking some sort of action that is not eating. And that's like the gist of the plan. And then the third part of the plan, after you've done your craving, that's your craving plan. Those 1, 2, and 3 is your craving plan. 1 is track your cravings, and 3 is control your food environment. And that is, to this day, I meal prep every Sunday.
Yeah.
All of our meals are we always have food here that is clean food, no drug food, and we don't really keep a lot of that around. My wife has some stuff because she's not at all. She's one of the rare people that is not at all sugar addicted. She can eat whatever she wants.
Yeah.
She's pretty nice to me, and I'm in a place now, thankfully, where that stuff can be here and it doesn't really tempt
Right.
me. It doesn't tempt me at all anymore, actually. It's just not something I want to put in my body. Um, so we have a little bit of a different diet. She does macros, so it just depends on what our goals are. But we're always prepared. And if I'm going somewhere, and I always take my food environment with me. So if I'm going to be at work, I have a big lunchbox. People comment on it because it's like one of those old school. It looks like it's an Igloo company lunchbox, and it looks like an old school lunchbox, which you see like a construction worker would carry around.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so people comment on me at school. They're like, "Hey, that's a big lunchbox," and I'm like, "This is a man's lunchbox." You
Yeah.
know, I have one. So I carry that around with me at least to work. If I'm going somewhere, like I'm going to be at in the evening for a long time, I just bring the food,
Yeah.
because there's just the chances of you making a poor choice, are just way, way higher when you're not in control of your food environment. Depending on all kinds of factors. So that's how I control my addiction. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not even an LSP or LCP. or LPC. I'm sorry. I'm not a doctor. I'm an addict. I'm a sugar addict and a binge eater, and this is something I stumbled my way through. And at the age of 37, I finally got control of it. I'm 43 now. I've been doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it can help other people, especially if they're not like if their disease progression isn't way off the charts, which I know it can get much worse than mine was.
Yeah.
Those folks probably need to come see somebody like you. They need David. They need the group. They need everything they can get because
Yeah.
their addiction is way more in control than mine was. But even still, I think it's still beneficial to track the cravings at minimum so that you know when they're going to come and when you're going to have to fight that battle.
100%. I mean, I think that's right. I think when we're in the problem, we think it's there all the time. There's always exceptions to to a problem being around. Like you say, like you were able to tie it down to, a couple of times during the day and maybe at the weekends. Um, Now, for other people, like you say, it might be much worse. But I can guarantee there'll be little windows in the day or little glimpses in the day when they're maybe absorbed in something or think at work or thinking about something else when the problem isn't around, and you can really learn from that, taking that external view and kind of watching it. And that's what I really liked about the Sugar Demons was it that sort of externalizing the problem. So the problem is something that I'm going to kind of externalize. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to kind of have a plan for it, and taking it out sort of in a way cognitively outside yourself. I really like that, and I was just speaking to someone else actually. Sorry.
Yeah, Jane McDonegal talks about it in her book, Super Better, as self-distancing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think I mentioned in there because I have a whole chapter in the book on Super Better. That's chapter 2.
Yeah.
It's the I think I got one bad review on my book, unfortunately, and it was about that chapter because it sounded too woo-woo to the guy. But out of all my reviews, that was the only bad one. But honestly, it's a cool thing. If if you're not into doing that stuff, if you're not into creating, just this self-distancing, creating your own idealized version of yourself that fights the sugar demons, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But the nuts and bolts are still there. But I think it's valuable because it gives you space between you and the problem, and you can see it happening to somebody else and not just you.
No, there are forms of therapy, like narrative therapy, where you kind of tell it as a story. You tell the story about the thing, or you can make up a new ending. There are forms of therapy where that externalizing is a completely valid thing to do. And like you say, it doesn't have to be people don't have to necessarily do it in a gamifying way. They can just do it in. I was just speaking to someone before who was telling me that she started to see the addiction as a kind of a thing talking to her from her shoulder, and she does this when she gets cravings to get rid of it. She kind of does a different action. And I mean, that's so unique to her, and the same way that people can develop their own techniques. So in the workbook, the Sugar Demons Workbook, which has just recently come out, hasn't it? So that will take people through these stages of making a note of when the cravings are, and then making plans around that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's why I made it. Just so you don't even have to have bought and read the Sugar Demons Addicts Guide to Conquering Sugar Addiction. You can just buy the workbook on its own, and it's fairly understandable because I think I put about 10 or 15 pages of instructions in there. I try to be as thorough as possible, so it's okay to stand alone as a standalone book. Just to, if you already have an idea of where you want to go with this, and just track your cravings as a little has a bunch of worksheets to help you plan your strategy, and then it kind of doubles as like a food journal after that, basically. So it's I think it's a useful tool that people can use it to kind of guide them. I had wished I had something. I was just
Yeah.
making a spreadsheet, or just writing it down on notebook paper, making notes to myself. But that makes it much easier when it's all in one place like that.
Yeah, I think that's a great resource for people, just to, as you say, it's making you think, you're writing it down, you can come back to it. It's all in one place. It's kind of external because it's not just going around in your head. We often try and think our way out of these things, don't we? What should I do tomorrow? And, maybe this, maybe that. But if you actually write stuff down, there's loads of evidence about the power of just writing things down and externalizing it. So I think that's a really useful resource.
Thank you. Yeah.
Another kind of whole theme I was thinking about when I was going to talk to you is the theme of kind of the gender issues really in the space. And like, it's funny what you were saying about the big lunchbox. And I don't know what you think about talking to whether we need to talk to men differently about this issue, or what are some of the particular issues that men face in this space, because I know it's a lot, you know, a lot of the people who work in the space and a lot of the people who struggle are women, and traditionally that's with, you know, maybe more on the sweet side of things. I know that a lot of the men patients that we work with often struggle with things like the beer and the bread. I don't know if it's a UK thing, the beer and the bread and the
Oh, we
uh,
got to hear.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know if you've got any
You have better beer than we do.
reflections on that.
Yeah, sure. So I think I think men are just as addicted as women. I think so. I was listening to the Low Carb MD podcast this morning, and Dr. Cho, one of the doctors on there, said 88% of our population here in the U.S. has metabolic dysfunction. I mean, 88%.
Crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
So that's men and women. And I think that guys just don't. Maybe they act like they don't care, or they really don't care. I don't know. They don't seem to don't mind don't have the same body issues as the women do necessarily. I don't know where it comes from. I have the same exact body issues as a woman. If I, when
Yeah.
I was fluctuating in weight, if I just gained a little bit on my love handles, I thought my whole world was crashing down. So I'm pretty body conscious, and that helped me. But but yeah, I think with guys, maybe there's a lot of roadblocks with them. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to share. They're gonna be in denial probably a lot more. They're, in my experience, less self-reflective a lot of the time, or if they are self-reflective, they're not gonna like let onto it. But when I talk to guys that I work with that are pretty receptive, it's just you just got to make that personal connection, and then they'll open up and talk with you. I mean, but yeah, it's in general though, from like a publishing perspective, they'll tell you, boys don't read, right? So your market is mostly women, right? When you wrote The Fork in the Road, when I wrote The Sugar Demons, everybody who reads it's predominantly it skews heavily female. So we're the audience that we're talking to in our book is predominantly female. In our books and our talks and stuff. And then, we've got to bring the guys along somewhere. So the only way to do that I've had it with a good experience with so far is just, man to man. They'll listen to podcasts. So that's a good place to reach them.
Yeah.
But beyond that, yeah, I don't know if, I don't know how to come to that problem, guy versus girl any differently other than just making that personal connection.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think it comes down to all the same. It's just trying to get people a little bit nearer to it. I mean, it's great that we've got Dave, isn't it? Dave Avram Wolf in the community. That's
one thing I did. That just came to me. I'm sorry. But there's a media bias, right? That's one of the reasons that we don't get guys on this, because I'm a sugar addict and a binge eater. There's a Lifetime movie about that for females, I'm sure. Where there's a female cast member who is experiencing an eating disorder, anorexia, bulimia, overeating, whatever it is, right? There are networks and movies about that, but there's almost nothing with guys in it that are having that have an eating disorder. Right. So that's the other thing, is if you don't see yourself in that role, then you're going to have a hard time acknowledging that outside of in general society. You're just not going to picture yourself with that. So you may have an eating disorder, but you're not going to recognize it because you've never seen anybody or met anybody else that's your gender that has one, or even seen one played on TV.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, isn't it? We need to think about it a bit more, I think, and think how we get the message across. Before we started recording, you suggested that you might be writing another book. Is that to do with food addiction, sugar addiction, or are you going on to something else?
Yeah, it is. It is. I've started it just very, very, in the beginning phases. I need to do some more research for it, but I'd said a few months ago, actually, after I came out with the workbook, I said to my wife and daughter, I'm always working on some project or another, and it's one of the ways I keep, my sugar demons. But I said, yeah, I think I've written everything I need to say on sugar. I don't really think I have anything else to say. Um, but I don't really have control over my muse, any more than anybody else who has an art or a craft does. And so it hit me just the other day that, um, I'm also an ADHD. I was also brought up as an ADHD kid. I didn't take meds for it. I didn't find out till much later.
Oh yeah.
And I realized a while back that, and I've told people this many times, I'm like, my ADHD clears up completely when I eat clean. So it's another reason, benefit for me. And then, just then I started realizing maybe I don't have ADHD. Maybe there's two kinds of ADHD. I'm not saying there isn't. I'm going to do more research, but maybe there's ADHD, which is, shrinking of the prefrontal cortex or underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, that is.
Yeah.
And then there's a type 2 ADHD, maybe that is just addiction. It's just seeking, like I am, I'll tell you a little story. So I was, when I was a kid, one of my memories of the 1980s was, uh, I would regularly on Saturday mornings, get a big bowl of breakfast cereal, which was just all sugar. It was Frosted Flakes or Cookie Crisp or whatever. We had those crazy. I didn't even like Lucky Charms because it wasn't like sweet enough. Like I had to have like the hardcore ones. Only the marshmallows were sweet, so I would just eat the marshmallows. But I would eat those those really sugary breakfast cereals, either a giant bowl or multiple bowls, and I would just sit there watching these super violent 80s cartoons,
Yeah.
and it was like fireworks going off in my
Yeah.
brain. I just loved it. I would just sit there, and it was like I was like on caffeine almost. I would be amped up.
Dopamine
And
city.
what's that?
Dopamine city.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Well, I didn't know at the time, but yeah, that was just a
Yeah.
dopamine. That was just a really, really strong dopamine response, which is what those breakfast cereals were designed to do. And so I would, literal fireworks. Like my brain felt like it was, like there was pop rocks going on, and I loved it. I loved that feeling. And then I'd go outside and run around with my friends for a while, and that was just every Saturday almost. Um, we have, you know, we have the same thing going on now, but it's even worse because when I was growing up, they had discovered the bliss point. They started manufacturing all those foods. Breakfast cereals exploded in the 1980s. It seemed like a new one was coming out every week.
Yeah.
Every cartoon had a cereal that went with it. Every movie had a cereal. Star Wars cereal for a while when the Return of the Jedi came out. There was all kinds of new cereals coming out all the time, and of course all kinds of new highly processed foods, because as soon as scientists figured out the bliss point thing, they figured out how to get us to buy more stuff, which turned us all into addicts essentially. And it's very widespread at this point, and as it was back then. So then I go to class and where's the fireworks, right? There's no fireworks, and I'm now I'm in a dopamine deprivation state.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not that I can't concentrate because I have ADHD. Maybe I'm seeking dopamine, a dopamine hit from somewhere, anywhere, and I can't concentrate because now I'm daydreaming, I'm chewing on my pencil, I'm fidgeting,
Yeah.
I'm acting like an addict, and I can't concentrate at school. And that's probably more like, it's very possible that I never had ADHD and that I'm actually just an addict, and I was acting like an addict in school, and that was interfering with my learning. And I see it worse now. And this is why I think it's important to write something on it from my perspective, not from, maybe not as a scientist or a doctor, but as just a school teacher who's a former addict, who is, or, is in recovery, who sees this now. I have, obviously it was bad then, but I remember when I went to school, it was like you had the fat kid in your class, maybe you had two, maybe one boy, one girl, and, you were, that was it. Then you knew them as the fat kid. That was how it was when I was in school, and I moved
Yeah.
around a lot as a kid, and it was pretty much uniform. Now, where I teach and all around the country, it's not the fat kid anymore. There are many, many, many overweight children and obese children. I see children with that Negrekin's ring around their necks already in junior high. So they're super insulin resistant, and they're having these, these skin thickening around their necks and darkening because they're already super insulin resistant. Those kids are going to be full-blown diabetic by the time they're 18 years old.
Yeah. Wow.
And before they've even graduated high school, they're going to start having body parts cut off before they're, and being on dialysis in their 30s. And we're allowing this to happen. We allowed this to happen. We got sick kids now all over the place, and it's our job to protect them, and we didn't protect them. Every single agency in every single authority that we count on failed us in this respect. We failed our kids. The government has failed us multiple times. Every year they come out with the new food standards. We feed them garbage in the cafeteria. It's mostly sugar. The scientific authorities, they failed us. Some people were right and tried to speak up, but there was a lot of bad science that kind of drowned them out. And then even our spiritual authorities, nobody there called it and tried to protect the kids and teach us the right way to eat. So everything failed us, and now we have just a tsunami of sick people, sick kids, and sick adults now, and it's getting worse. What I'm seeing is now we have another explosion of all of these other kinds of foods that are even more processed and more terrible than they were in the 1980s. And now I've got, you want to talk about fireworks, now they've got the internet. So my breakfast cereal with sugary cereal with Saturday morning cartoons is now, TikTok and a bag of Takis. They've got, that's fireworks. They've got caffeine and, a Monster energy drink and, watching YouTube videos, crazy stuff, fireworks. And they can get it on their phone all the time, all day long. And then they come to my class and they're like, where's the fireworks? And, I'm just a teacher. We only have so much fireworks that we can do. We're trying to room full of
life isn't all fireworks, is it? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's not, but we can't give them the dopamine hit that they're constantly giving themselves. We're taking them out of that state, and they don't like it. So it's affecting their education. We're not just ruining their bodies. We're ruining their bodies. We can see that because we have more overweight children and obese children than we ever had before in history. And and they're getting sicker. They're going to be sicker adults, and we're trying to teach them, and the ones that are metabolically protected a little bit, they're just going to take them longer to get sicker. And if we think that it's not affecting, those kids are we think they're fine, they're not, because it's not just affecting their bodies, it's affecting their minds too. It's poisoning everything, and we've been failing to fix that, and that's what we need to do. So that's my next project, I hope, will be about, maybe it's not ADHD, maybe a lot of this is just sugar addiction and addictive behavior, and maybe a lot of these other behaviors too that we see are just seeking. The kid can't focus because he's seeking the next dopamine hit, and we need to address that because we're just teachers. We don't have fireworks.
I think that's absolutely essential and brilliant, and really important for parents to know, really important for schools to know. Just the problems that they're setting up, really, but like you say, physically, mentally, but also educationally and socially and everything. What was interesting recently when I was looking at a lot of the research around sugar addiction for this bid that we're making to ICD-10 to see if we can get it recognized as a disorder.
Very important what you're doing there.
And fingers crossed. And there were quite a few papers on this topic, which is that when you look at adults with sugar addiction, one of the psychological factors that comes out as distinguishing them from others is impulsivity. So exactly as you're saying, that's kind of a defining characteristic of ADHD, that sort of impulsiveness. But it doesn't tell you whether it's cause or effect. And I'm pretty sure that if you took a group of people with sugar addiction and put them through, let's imagine we had a perfect treatment that could get all of those people off sugar, and I'm sure if we redid the tests of impulsivity, they'd be much improved, because the it's affecting the frontal lobes, but I'm pretty sure that some of that would be reversible if it was got early enough. But I mean, that's all just speculation, really. But yeah,
hypothetical.
Hypothetical, but people,
you kind of know it's true, right?
It's kind of know it's true. We all felt so much better mentally off sugar. It's just that a lot of people have never tried it, so they don't know how well they could feel. And people need to know that feeding their children sugar is not a loving act, because it is actually changing their brains, and that's not in a good way. It's not something that you want. Is the effect that sugar has on has on the brain. So I really applaud you for that project, and I hope I don't know if you know that Dave Avram Wolf was is ADHD as well.
I
Yeah,
did. I saw he was thanking Bitten for his getting him off his ADHD meds after 9 years.
yeah,
And,
which is quite
yeah, I'm
something.
gonna reach out to him soon, and he and I are gonna talk because he and I have the same addiction, the same disease, and we're both ADHD kids. So I'd like to have his opinion
Yeah, yeah, that'd
for
be
sure.
so interesting, so interesting. I don't know what you think about. I've just been musing recently on the power of kind of music to alter our mood and our kind of state of mind, and kind of wondering whether that might help some people who to sort of cope with a craving in the moment. I've been kind of thinking about that and the power of music. And I was thinking about you working in a gym and doing all the CrossFit and everything, and I guess they have some pretty powerful tunes going on, do they? I wondered if you had a favorite kind of a favorite sort of motivational track, or something that can shift your mood, or
Yeah, I mean, I love music. It gets pretty loud in the CrossFit gyms.
yeah,
We blast it, but yeah, it's actually like you said, it's one of my strategies as far as power ups go. When I have that before strategy, once when the cravings come, you have like in half, the before portion of your plan of attack is to activate a power up of some kind, something to give you a little bit of a physical, emotional, social boost. So one of the emotional boosts is music that you can use, and you'll play your song, you'll play your jam that you're really into, and you'll get ready because you're about to go into a fight.
yeah,
And similar to what we used to do in boxing, you get
lovely.
yourself like up, and then you go in and you go into the fight. So
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely think it's powerful. It's obviously music is powerful and it has that effect to get you pumped up and help you get ready for that craving. I think it's a good it's one part of one of your tools that you can use to fight those cravings.
Mm.
And yeah, I think I posted on your to add that Adam 7 song, Stand Tall, Think Clear, because I really like that song as far as
Yeah.
kind of get not necessarily pumped up, but it's like an inspiring song that it does get me pumped up a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, it gets me a little bit pumped up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the
Yeah,
song.
I think I did add it actually. Yeah. So for anyone who's listening who doesn't know, we've on Spotify, if you follow Jen Unwin One, we've got a food addiction recovery playlist, and anybody can join and anybody can suggest things. I just thought that'd be nice because I've yeah, like your track, I've heard some interesting new suggestions. Quite an eclectic mix on there already, so that's good. Yeah, brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Good. Well, that it's just been a delight to talk to you, and I'm sure our paths will definitely cross again in some clubhouse room
Oh,
somewhere.
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'm really excited about your new project. I think that's super important.
Well,
Um,
maybe I can get a quote from you at some point. I'll reach out.
100%. Yeah. And
Thank you.
when I think about so when we raised our children, I was still pretty high carb, so of course they ended up that way, and we definitely had one that had real concentration problems. And then my own daughter is now raising hers in a much more clean, keto-ish sort of way, and they're very calm kids. They're really well behaved, relaxed kids, and I don't think other than that, I don't think the parenting's been incredibly different. So it is really interesting to see those real effects. So brilliant.
Oh yeah, my hypothesis is we would have a lot less behavior issues in schools just across the board if we could just fix the diet. But
Yeah,
we're I don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime, if I'll be able to see the benefit of it and have to deal with less classroom management issues. That would be lovely, but it's going to take 10 years just to get there.
yeah.
It's going to take a generation because we've already kind of ruined this one with the
I
sugar and the processed foods.
I sadly think so. Yeah, but I think for each individual, it's a bit like Bitten's starfish throws. For each individual case, there's still hope. Like I was 15, 15, I was 48. I mean, I've spoken to people older than me who've managed to give up sugar and just feel so much better. So, if we can catch the kids, even the ones that are already quite bad, they're young enough to be a bit flexible and a bit
Oh yeah, they're more resilient than I was at
more
37.
resilient. Yeah,
Yeah, just getting so many of them to change so quickly it's going to take some time.
yeah.
That's all I meant. Yeah, they're definitely salvageable. We don't give up
Yeah,
on
they're
them that.
salvageable. We just need more of us doing the salvaging.
Exactly. Their
Yeah,
parents, yeah, all of us, yes. The schools, the cafeteria, everything needs to change. Needs a
yeah.
full rehab, but it's going to take time to get there. What you guys are doing with the ICD-10 code will be fantastic. That'll help us get a lot closer, I think.
Yeah. We'll see how that goes. I mean, it's a start. It's a start. Even if it gets pushed out this time, they'll have to tell us why and what why they've rejected it, and then we can we can just keep going from here. So onwards and upwards. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time,
Well,
and
thank you for having me.
we'll speak again soon. Thank you.
All right.